Hello, I'm Jorge Gestoso. Welcome to a new program. On today's show, the Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Ralph Gonsalves. Mr. Prime Minister Ralph Gonsalves, a warm welcome to the program.
Thank you very much, and all the best to you and the people of Venezuela.
Same to you. Mr. Gonsalves, how are you feeling? How is your health after that attack with a rock in your head that have to force you to have medical treatment? How are you feeling?
I'm getting there day by day. The injury is healing, and I'm pretty okay. The neurologist said that they will have to monitor me on an ongoing basis for the next 4 to 6 weeks because, you know, there's something called post-concussion syndrome, which has many different manifestations. And I am not a young man. I'm 75 years of age, so you have to watch me carefully.
The person who sent that threw the rock to your head has been arrested?
The police has arrested someone for throwing the missile, the projectile. And the trial date is set for the 15th of September. The person was in custody, and the presiding magistrate gave bail, and that person is on bail, awaiting trial.
Okay, you have in your hands a hot potato. You have in your hands two crises at the same time, almost like the perfect storm. You are dealing with the aftermath of the volcano eruption La Soufrière that was in the northern part of the island. According to the United Nations, left about 20,000 people in need of shelter, and on top of that, the pandemic of COVID-19. Why don't you tell us about the situation regarding people needing shelter because of the consequence of the volcano?
Well, first of all, I would just like to tell you how we view it. You said the perfect storm, twin crises. We don't see either of them as a crisis. For me, a crisis is a condition in which the principals are innocent of the extent of the condition, and they have no credible bundle of ideas as to the way forward. We do have a proper appreciation of the challenges before us, both in respect of COVID and the aftermath of the volcanic eruption and the Atlantic hurricane season. But we have had one hurricane which has struck already, Elsa, again struck in the northeast of the country, which was affected badly by the volcano. And we have a bundle of ideas as to how we go forward. In relation to the volcano, there are two stages to it, the aftermath. One, the actual humanitarian effort. We still have a large number of persons not yet back in the Northeast. Everyone is back on the Northwest, and significant numbers are back in the Northeast. But there are areas in which water and electricity services have not yet been fully restored. And you have a lot of ash which we are cleaning, and the river valleys, we have to be cleaning them. A lot of stones which came down. And there are a lot of people who are still outside of the red zone on the Northeast who are in shelters or in private homes outside of that area. We have about 1,500 persons still in shelters. We have 40 odd shelters still in operation, and we have to take care of those persons. And then, of course, we have to provide food and other supports for persons who have been taken in by friends or relatives, or persons who have rented rooms or apartments. And we have to help feeding them, as we have to help to feed and provide other supports, including psychosocial support for those who have gone back into the orange zone and in the lower regions of the red zone. And it's
And
massive exercise.
Regarding the pandemic of COVID-19, what's the situation, Mr. Prime Minister?
Well, we have been using all the relevant tools. Early identification, contact tracing, testing, quarantining, isolation, and the vaccines. We have enough vaccines at the moment. We have AstraZeneca, we have the Sputnik, and in another 2 weeks or so, we are going to get some Pfizer.
Mm-hmm.
But the uptake is very slow. The number of persons who have taken vaccines is just about 15 or 20% of the population. So it is not so much anti-vax, but real vaccine reluctance. And we have to be using a number of methods, of course, persuasion, but we have to put some measures in place legally for frontline workers to ensure that they are persuaded to take the vaccine. People like doctors and nurses.
Precisely. There was the issue here, as far as we got word, was that the parliament, the day that you were being attacked, were discussing a possible health reform in order to make mandatory to the basically the what they call the frontline workers the vaccination, and therefore there was a demonstration against that, and from that demonstrations they attack you. What is the situation regarding to make a mandatory to the frontline workers the vaccination?
We are not making it mandatory. You're going to have a choice. That is to say, doctors, nurses, police, prison officers, people who work at the airports and the seaports. You have a choice to take or not to take the vaccine. If you take the vaccine, that's fine. If you don't take the vaccine, you will simply have to find another job. But you have a choice. And in relation to other public sector workers, we would want to have them vaccinated every 2 weeks. So frontline workers, you will be given a choice as to whether or not you take the vaccine. For non-frontline workers, we will insist that you take the test. Now, unless we do this, you're not going to get back to any sense of normalcy. It is true that we have been able to control fairly well the spread of the virus. Occasionally we have some peaks. I think but by and large, it's not as bad as in some other countries. We are, I guess you can call us a medium risk country. But with the Delta variant and other dangerous variants nearby in the United States and in Barbados and now in Trinidad, I've been told, we have had one of Delta variant thus far. But once you have more tourists coming through the cruise ships and the tourist season comes on, you're gonna find more of these variants coming to us and creating a public health hazard. You see, under our constitution, you are permitted to restrict or limit an individual's right or personal liberty in respect of the restraining the spread of infectious diseases, so that you can do the limitation on an individual's liberty if it is reasonably required for a public purpose, public health, and if it is reasonably justifiable in a democratic society. Those are the parameters in our constitution. And our laws are made within the framework of those parameters. And whatever we are doing will pass constitutional and legal muster. Of course, there are some persons who don't want to take the vaccine. Well, if you don't want to take it and you're in the front line, you'll be given this choice. You either take it and work there or work elsewhere. If you are, sorry, go ahead.
No, what I'm saying is, how would you qualify the resistance of certain segment of the population to get vaccinated? Those people who were trying to demonstrate in front of the parliament, the size, the scope, is a group that is growing? Is a group that is diminishing?
I don't think so. You had about 200 persons outside of the parliament. What has happened, and you have to understand the political context. I am now in my 5th consecutive term as Prime Minister. Our party has been in office since March 2001. We have won every single election since then, fair and square. So that the opposition, a right-wing group, conservative in its instincts, Trumpist in its methodology, that they are seeking to undo what they couldn't accomplish in a free and fair election. So that since 2015, in fact, we have been having these periodic protests. And since November last year, when we had my 5th term starting, because we don't have term limits for prime ministers, that they have been holding these protests, very small numbers. This has been, I believe, the largest of the lot, about 200 persons. Usually it's 50, 75, 100 plus. And we go on with our business normally. We are an open, free, and democratic society. But you can't go about break the law and be violent. And you certainly can't stop a member of parliament going to parliament, because both our common law and our statute law, for instance, the House of Assembly Powers, Immunities and Privileges Act, guarantee me as a member of parliament the right of unhindered access to parliament and from parliament, from wherever I'm going. You can't stop me, you can't interfere with me. And certainly, you can't throw missiles at me, and you can't injure me, and you can't burst my head. You can do none of those things. You can be imprisoned for hindering a member of parliament, any member of parliament, on his way to parliament, because the vote is sacred, it is solemn. And our parliament is the foundation head. It's the bastion of our democracy. And historically, we have done, our policing has been done with a light touch. That is to say, police light, L-I-T-E. But clearly the circumstances have now changed, because
you were getting
desperate. The opposition is getting desperate. So it's not about the vaccine issue per se. Every single week, they come with something else. Basically, what they want to do is to get Ralph and the Unity Labour Party out of power. That is what this is about. And they will use any opportunistic reason, my brother.
You were getting an overwhelming repudiation against the use of violence against you from all over the world, especially from the CARICOM organization, all the states of the Caribbean. So
All over the world.
All over the world. So means that the repudiation of violence and the rejection of violence as a means has been really, really clear that that's not the way to go.
Absolutely. In fact, my brother Prime Minister Modi posted a very telling tweet of solidarity with me and condemning violence. I know him personally, and governments from all over the world, and I tell you, all over, and organizations from all over the world, including churches, far, far afield. So that has been happening.
In the case you were mentioning before, we're talking about already in the hurricane season, and you were getting the quote unquote the taste of it with the Hurricane Elsa that was striking the island with high winds. Tell me about the devastation that the climate change is doing in your island, in the Caribbean, and the islands around you.
It is horrendous. It is affecting lives and livelihoods. It's affecting the forests. It's affecting the warming of the seas, and therefore affecting fishing adversely, affecting the farmers. You have a lot of river defense problems. You have a lot of problems at the seashore with waves which are eroding the seacoast. All of these things taking place amidst the challenges of COVID and amidst the challenges of the volcanic eruptions and the challenges posed by imperialism and monopoly capitalism in our part of the world. And so when you look at us, it's really, we are very vulnerable, and it's amazing that we have been able to hold things together and move forward, reducing poverty, carrying forward our education revolution, the housing. In this particular phase, we will have to build a significant number of houses. We have to do it on a phase basis for persons who have lost their homes and persons whose homes are built near to the river valleys, because the lahars, that is to say the mud flows, which come down, would move everything in front of them. Because remember this, because of the La Soufrière volcano, the eruption, you have over 100 million cubic meters of material which came out from the volcano. Some of it has gone to the sea, some of it even went to neighboring countries like Barbados. A substantial amount still is on the slopes of the mountains. And then when you get the rains coming now in the rainy season, and the forests have already been affected, they have a freer path to move with extraordinary speed, and anything they meet in their way, they will wash them away. So we have to take care of the houses on the banks of these river valleys. It's a very expensive matter and very serious, and it is unfortunate with all of these tasks before us, these tasks relating to the economy, the physical infrastructure, health, the social matters relating to education, for example, and security, that you have opportunistic politicians, the kind of people, I will tell the people of Venezuela, who don't want us to have relations with Venezuela and Cuba, who think that Maduro is not a legitimate leader, and that it was Guaido. They bought into the whole foreign policy of the Trump administration, and they give support to all this nonsense about weaponizing the financial system against progressive governments. That's the kind of opposition you have in this country. But
Talking about
the people are steadfast with the government, and the message I want to give to my brothers and sisters in Venezuela and the world, that don't worry, there is no prospect whatsoever of this progressive nationalist, social democratic, regionalist government of solidarity with our brothers and sisters in the rest of Caribbean and the world, in Latin America, that there's no chance of it being replaced by a bunch of opportunists from the other side, whatever issue they try to use.
And precisely, you have heard President of Mexico, Andrés Manuel López Obrador, saying 3 weeks ago that he believes that should be entertained the idea to replace the Organization of American States, the OAS, OEA in Spanish, for another institution that represents the interests of the region meaning also the Caribbean, because your country is a member of the OAS. Do you believe that the OAS should be replaced by, for example, an organization like CELAC?
Well, the truth is this, is that the OAS, certainly over the last few years, has been used by Almagro, the Secretary General, and the Trump presidency. The OAS has been used as a battering ram against progressive governments in Venezuela and Cuba, Bolivia, in Dominica. They don't like the government in St. Vincent and the Grenadines either. You see, they were trying to do in Nicaragua. I mean, the first time I know you had a coup by electoral observer mission is what took place in Bolivia with Evo Morales. And we are always in favor of countries like the United States and Canada and ourselves in Latin America and the Caribbean seeking to work together. But we have to ensure that the OAS doesn't become an arm of modern imperialism. But we ourselves need our CELAC, our Community of States of Latin America and the Caribbean, where we can have a deeper form of integration, something more intimate and attuned to our own interests, as, for instance, the Association of Caribbean States, as, for instance, the ALBA, as, for instance, the Caribbean Community, or the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States. All these are regional integration mechanisms which have points of contact and relevance with one another within our own interests. Still, United States, 350 million people, they're our giant neighbor, a lot of resources, our people are linked with them through migration and trade, and tourism, and everything else. And the United States is a great land of culture and science. So we can't ignore it. And we have to work with it, but we have to work with it in terms which are beneficial to the United States and to ourselves, and not to have a condition of imperial domination and subservience on the other hand, and certainly not to have interference in our internal affairs. And in other words, no Monroe Doctrine in the 21st century or anything akin to that. So I see a place for the Organization of American States, but with a framework and with an engagement which is not imperial, because we must have conversations with the United States and Canada. We just can't ignore them. And we can have a hemispheric body, but within that hemispheric body, we also must have our own CELAC and other associated organizations.
Finally, Mr. Prime Minister, for you, the eruption of the volcano that left thousands of people needing shelter, the pandemic, Now we know that last year, for example, the tourism that beyond agriculture, that is very important for you, that is also practices in the north of the island, exactly in the area of the volcano that erupted. Tourism was down around 70% last year. And definitely the question is, since you are in power for the last 20 years, has this 2021 been your more difficult or the most challenging year in your power, in your office?
I will say from the pandemic of March the 11th last year to the present time has been undoubtedly the most challenging period. Not crisis, but a monumental challenge, many-sided challenge. It has required a lot of ingenuity and creativity and drawing on the resilience of our people and support from our friends and allies in the region and in the global community.
Mr. Prime Minister Ralph Gonsalves, thanks very much for joining us and a speedy recovery.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. All the best.